Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald on the way up Elkhart Hill on one of the Wildflower tours that Gillette Ransom has been giving up this hill for the last 15 years. They've been so popular and noteworthy that in fact that in April 2013, Midwest Living has given the Elkhart Wildflower tour quite a bit of space in its magazine. And as you can see here, it's Discoveries celebrating the best of the Midwest. And this is what we're in for this afternoon or this morning when we go up Elkhart Hill, the Virginia bluebells and all the other wildflowers that thrive up there. Gillette, you must be really pleased when you go to all the trouble to do these tours over the years and somebody finally takes notice.
Right, well that did take some putting together by one of our gals here in Elkhart, and she was absolutely genius in what she put together, and we didn't know what to expect. We thought perhaps the world would arrive on our shoulders.
There you go.
And,
too many, maybe too many.
Right,
people.
well, and we didn't want anybody to be disappointed. And the only disappointing part this year, of course, was we had such a slow spring.
Yeah.
Last year it was a fast spring, so it's hard to always peg it right, but we've had a wonderful time this April.
Well, nature will tell us what's going to happen. We don't tell nature what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Today we've got our second warm day in a row, and we're hoping that when we get up there, they're not just kaput, because they don't last long in the heat, do they?
No, they don't. No, as a matter of fact, another 2 weeks, if it stays warm, there will not be a trace of any of the things we will be seeing today.
Yeah.
They
We're
will
also
all be
going to
gone.
get a little information from a biologist about Elkhart Hill, how it came to be, the kind of things that thrive up there. So we'll get some natural history of Elkhart Hill. But mostly it's the wildflowers.
Right.
And people, like you say, they come from all over the country to visit there.
Yes.
Terrific.
Perfect.
Now, on the way up, you have some interesting things to point out to people. And you told me that this farm field right here is noteworthy.
It is. As a matter of fact, if you can look all the way up beneath the evergreens there at the top of the field, that was where the first pioneer cabin in Logan County sat. It was built by Judge James Latham and his son Richard. It was a double cabin, very similar to the double cabin out at New Salem. And then he immediately improved 30 acres and planted corn. That was in 1818.
That's the year Illinois became a state.
That's exactly right. And that was the beginning of the pioneer settlement.
And this farm here has been cultivated every year for, well, that's
95 years.
195 years.
Continuous cultivation. Back then, it probably would have produced maybe 30 bushels an acre or so. Our last good year, not including last year, which was a little dry, produced somewhere around 220 bushels an acre.
Wow.
So quite a difference.
Shows you where we've come from, huh?
Yes, quite a difference. Behind us, by the way, is part of the old carriage road. You can see that it is kind of indented.
Yeah.
Back in the horse and carriage days, great Aunt Jessie would bring her horses down to the railroad track to pick up visitors. And she thought that the horses deserved the beautiful, what was then partially shaded, lovely alleyway. And when the advent of cars began, she put the car traffic up here where it is bumpy and hard because she didn't care about the cars. So.
But the wagons would use that, and they of course had their canopy. They had a tree-covered canopy.
And we lost a very large portion of that canopy in the '95 tornado. We lost close to 200 trees on this property alone. It was quite an issue.
Yeah, sad, really sad.
Yes, very sad.
Okay, Gillette. Well, after a very pleasant 5-minute ride up the hill, Elkhart Hill, we arrive at where you park and let your guests off, and you take them to this monument over here first. What's the monument about?
Well, actually, the monument was erected by my great-great-aunt Jessie. And as you will quickly learn, this is a generic historical marker because it says, here in 1818 through 1825 lived the first Indian agent for the state of Illinois, Judge James Latham, appointed by John Quincy Adams, President of the United States, reared his family friends of John Dean Gillette, who purchased this land, willed it to his daughter Jessie Gillette, who erected this monument to them and the other pioneers of Logan County. But as we were coming up the driveway, the pioneer cabin was about 400 yards over there under the pine trees,
Right.
not here. And the whole issue was Jessie, who lived here and owned this property, and her sister Emma, who owned the actual historic site, were having a feud. So even though it is cut in stone, it doesn't mean that it's true.
And as we look, this is a perfect spot for it because we're on this wildflower tour, and this monument is just surrounded by Virginia bluebells.
Absolutely.
They're just gorgeous, and this is just a small bit of what we're about to see, huh?
Absolutely.
It looks like on this hot day that we chose, we got lucky, doesn't it?
Perfect timing.
They're in very good shape.
Perfect timing.
Terrific. Okay, let's go see some more.
All right.
Gillette, for some of these, they're so delicate that you really have to look very carefully. And what is this little pinky here?
That is, as a matter of fact, the first flower to bloom in the spring. It is called Spring Beauty. It is also called fairy spuds or wild potato. It comes out of a bulb underground, which was used as a food source by both pioneers and Native Americans. And as a matter of fact, the animal kingdom also does a number on these. Everything from grizzly bears to mice will dig down and eat the tubers of that plant.
Now, we don't have any grizz up here, do we?
No,
Okay,
fortunately,
good.
no grizzlies.
I can rest then. What's this one here?
That is a purple trillium, and purple trillium is almost a pharmacy as far as the number of things that it was used for in the pioneer and early days. The name trillium, tri, for the three. As
right.
you notice,
3 leaves.
there are 3 leaves, there are 3 sepals, and there are 3 blossoms to the plant. This is one of the plants whose seeds are dispersed by ants, who lick the sticky, sweet substance off the seeds and then throw the seeds in their garbage. And that will create a new colony of trillium.
Oh, interesting. Now, there's a leggy yellow starting to bloom right next to it. It's interesting how these seem to coexist very well together. What's this leggy yellow
Now
flower?
that is part of the buttercup family, and I'm not sure what the specific name is. It would be also part of the ranunculus, and it grows all over at this time of the year, and you can see there's even some back by your foot there.
Very dainty, very dainty, and of course this gorgeous violet color. These are all over the place.
Yes, they are. And for some people, they consider them almost a nuisance because they will crowd out your lawns and crowd out your flowers in your garden, and they just continually take over. But they are very prolific.
On Elkhart Hill, they look pretty good.
Yes, they do.
Now there's a good look at the Virginia bluebells on Elkhart Hill. Wow, they really seem to like growing on this hillside and under these trees. And it's almost, they're so thick it almost looks like somebody planted them. Tom Lerczak, you're very familiar with Elkhart Hill. What in the heck is a hill doing in the middle of this prairie?
This hill is a remnant of, it's actually sand and gravel that was deposited here during the glacial period, the Illinoisan glacial advance, which was the earlier one, thousands of years before the latest glacial advance that ended about 10,000 years ago.
So that glacial period, all this stuff was moved down and it was deposited, just dumped here.
Right. Sand and gravel was brought in the ice, in the glacial ice, as it moved across the landscape, picked these rocks and gravel and everything, picked it up, and it was embedded in the ice. And then as the ice melted, it dropped those materials down. And at that time, the Illinois Glacier covered almost all of Illinois. There were only a few places in southern Illinois and northwestern Illinois and a little bit of western Illinois that escaped that. Then that glacier completely retreated, and there was thousands of years of an interglacial period, which is what we're in now. But after that, there was another glacial advance, the Wisconsin, and that glacier did not cover all of Illinois. It actually stopped just a few miles northeast of here. And there's a big hill there as you go on the highways. You'll be on flat rolling land, and all of a sudden you'll come to a big hill, and that's the terminal moraine of that glacier.
Oh, I'll be darned. You know, you're a preservation specialist with DNR, and you brought a cool map along with you. And this is a geologic road map. And if you look just north of Springfield here along I-55, you can see this maroon area is Elkhart Hill. And you can see there aren't many of those right around here. This is the highest point in quite a ways. So on this hill, because of this has been preserved in the middle of the prairie the way it is, we have a lot of things growing here that you don't see in the surrounding areas.
That's correct, and plus portions of the hill have never been logged, and so well, maybe a few trees taken out now and then, but we call it old growth forest. And so it has been minimally disturbed, and there are wildflower communities here and trees that are very unique to this hill. There's
a difference between like that side of the road and this side of the road. Let's first look this way.
Like I said, not all of the hill is old growth forest, and some of it has been disturbed, and we have invasive species coming into Illinois all the time that are affecting our natural communities. And one of the problems here that on Elkhart Hill is this plant right in front of us, bush honeysuckle. And it's not native to Illinois or North America, and it has tended to move into our forests and completely take over the understory and crowd out the native plants.
And it would crowd out the wildflowers too, wouldn't it?
Right. And if you look around the forest here, you see all those shrubs are bush honeysuckle.
And then off, right in the middle, you see a lower lying flowering plant down there, which is also an annoying thing, isn't it?
That's garlic mustard, and that is a herbaceous plant, but it also tends to take over the forest floor and crowd out the native wildflowers. So you have two things here that are changing the forest. Bush honeysuckle has not yet really moved into all of the areas, and what we were looking at across the road here is pretty much free of bush honeysuckle.
Right, and that's here where we saw the bluebell field, the bluebells here under. Now I got another question for you. You say there was old growth forest here. This is second growth forest, and when you look at Elkhart Hill, not only do you notice that there's a hill in the middle of prairie, but there's a forest. How come the forest was able to stay?
Well, originally there was a marshy area that surrounded Elkhart Hill, and so most of central Illinois was tall grass prairie. As a matter of fact, it's referred to sometimes as the Prairie Peninsula, because prairies occurred more commonly further west, and central Illinois is part of that large tall grass prairie that's further west in the Great Plains. And so the prairies were maintained with fire. Mainly set by the Native Americans, purposely set. And so as the fires moved across the landscape, they would, encounter that marshy area, and that protected the hill from the prairie fires. And so anytime an area is protected from fire, trees start to take over and invade. So Elkhart Hill was always a forested area.
Not intentionally, it just worked out that way. It was surrounded by a swampy area, it stopped the fires, and voila, you got old growth forest.
Right,
neat.
Right.
Terrific. And you've got some projects working on Elkhart Hill, don't you?
Right, we have a project that we're working on now to eradicate the bush honeysuckle. And we have funds that are provided through the Natural Areas Acquisition Fund, and we use that money to manage properties and also to acquire other high-quality properties.
Well, thanks for the visit. I certainly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Boy, Gillette, you have to look very carefully for this one because the big leaves cover up the blooms. But if you look down and bring it up, you can see that it's got a nice big colorful bloom on it. What are we looking at?
You're looking at wild ginger.
Wow.
And you're looking at it the way an ant might look at it because a honeybee never would find it.
Yeah, it's buried. I mean, not buried, but it's under all the roots.
That's right.
And what does the ant have to do with it?
Well, the ant is the pollinator. And again, it's because honeybees would not be able to find it as it is so close to the ground. Ants and other crawling insects, but ants primarily are the pollinators.
It's a beautiful color. What, did the Indians ever use it for anything?
Okay, yes, actually they had some very interesting uses, one of which the Meskwaki Indians used it to season meat that had died from some unknown cause.
Ooh, okay.
And it does have some antibiotic properties to it, so it, you know, there was actual medical, you know, backing up of that. It also was used for whooping cough, stomach upsets, fevers, skin inflammations, and things like that. Because if you say you're here in the 1500s, there is not a Walgreens on every corner, and if you started to get sick, you would have to go to all the folklore that your tribe or your grandparents had to find out how to get well.
Yeah. Gillette, this is just the sweetest plant. Look at this. What are we looking at here?
That is blue-eyed Mary, and it's also called innocence. It is a member of the snapdragon family. It's an annual, where so many of the other plants that we are looking at and will see are perennials and come back from corms or bulbs or tubers. This one comes from seed, and although the seed production on each one of these little plants is very, very small, it makes up for it in the vigor and high germination rates. So you see a little colony forming there.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful little splash of color here. I mean, and you can look, and it seems to like it in full sun too.
Right, and it actually it has only just started to bloom within the last day. It needs to be warmer than 50 degrees.
Nice. Well, Gillette, this one, you know, a lot of these flowers, wildflowers, have real cute common names, but this one has kind of a weird, what's this, a false what?
False rue anemone.
False rue anemone.
It's a tongue twister.
Yes, it is.
What is very interesting, besides the fact that it is a member of the buttercup family, ranunculus, and is a cousin to columbine, if you notice the leaves, this little blossom will have between 10 and 40 stamens loaded with pollen, which attract insects, obviously, for pollination.
Yeah.
But there's no nectar.
Huh.
It's kind of a big tease.
I'll be darned. So they go ahead and they get the job done, but they don't give anything back.
That's right.
Now, I recognize this, but I didn't know the story behind it. This is a May apple, right?
Right.
And these are kind of common, at least I've noticed them around a lot, but there's no flower.
Well, there is a flower if it has two parasols. You'll see where it branches.
Okay, this one has two parasols here.
Two parasols.
And this will be the flower?
That will be the flower.
Okay.
And will eventually set and create an apple, which is edible once it is fully ripe. But until that moment, the entire plant, including the fruit, is poisonous.
Oh.
You'll have to wash your hands. The Meskwaki Indians would grind up the entire mayapple plant and put it in water and steep it, and then use the water from it to, well, as an insecticide on their potato plants.
No.
And of course the potato itself was underground, so it wasn't picking up on any of the poison. but the poison from the mayapple would keep the insects away from the potato plant.
Isn't that amazing?
Pretty forward thinking.
Yeah, and the fact that they discovered that somehow, yeah.
Right, trial and error.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're a little late in the season, Gillette, but we're perfect for bluebells, and we're standing knee-deep in a beautiful sea of bluebells right here. Wow.
It is such a wonderful spring, fresh smell, too, when you are here after a rain as we are. You just can take in this wonderful, growing spring fragrance. But not only do we have bluebells here, if you notice, we have some peculiar bluebells that are in fact white and pure white, not just pale blue. These are white.
Yes, they are. What caused that? Not that you might know, but I mean...
I think the numbers are something like 1 out of every 100,000 plants genetically throw out a white one. And then if they actually cross-pollinate with some of the blue ones, they end up causing paler blue ones as well, and you can kind of pick them out every periodically. Just part of the random assortment.
Hey, let's gaze into one of these, and you can point out something that's peculiar about bluebells. These have a very long, they're elongated flower.
Right.
And that causes some issues with nature, doesn't it?
Right. It has to be pollinated by a long-tongued bee or minor bees. And some of the insects actually give up on the idea of going all the way through the blossom that way, and they will just bore holes, perforate the back end of the flower to get into it.
Oh, beautiful.
Now, just out of my need to tell you everything I know about bluebells, they are also called lungwort, and it is only because there is a European variety of plant that resembles this that used to be used to treat lung ailments. We have decided, however, that the best cure for any lung problems is to get out and walk through these.
It's not the bluebells themselves,
right.
It's being among the bluebells.
It's being among them.
Okay.
You bet, you bet.
Well, Gillette, we really had trouble finding this one, but we finally did.
Yes, we did.
What are we looking at?
We are looking at Dutchman's breeches. It's part of the poppy family. It has 2 cousins that are also poppy family members, and all 3 of them are big deal medicinal plants. From the doctrine of signatures, they felt that the early herbalists back in 40 AD felt that if it had the shape of something that was a body part, that's what it could cure. They felt it was a message from the Almighty to help them out.
So in this case, it's from the waist down because it's breeches, right?
Right,
okay.
Right. So syphilis, which of course was unfortunately here, urinary tract infections, some of the squirrel corn, which is a very close cousin to this, was used to treat Meniere's disease and muscular tremors, and the bloodroot, which is also long gone at this point in the spring, was used not only for war paint and for dyes, but they would use some of the juice from that with maple syrup to treat sore throats. Sounds pretty good to me. This is our Walgreens.
Now, Gillette, most of these plants we sought out. In this case, it's one we want to avoid.
Well, unless you are choosing to eat it or make tea out of it or use it for a restorative or one of those other things, yes, you do not want to walk through this plant.
Nettles.
Stinging nettle.
Stinging nettles.
Also called smartweed, because you get very smart very quickly after walking through this.
Well, you can see the hair-like things on it. Is that what causes the stinging sensation?
Yes,
that you, okay.
Absolutely. It burns like nothing other than fire ants.
Is that going to bloom this year?
It does bloom, and the blossoms, the young leaves, the roots can all be used medicinally for an amazing number of cure-alls, everything from arthritis to gout to you name it.
Well, you know, I've got a sheet here that showed, now this is just a partial list. Look at all the things that it said to heal or cure by making tea out of it.
Tea or composting. Actually, if this is growing in your yard, don't throw it away. Let it compost, and it will enrich your soil in your garden. If you dry it, your cattle will eat it after a particularly bad calving. It helps the cow to get back on her feet and increases her milk production. Women, too, can use this for milk production if they're pregnant.
Surprising.
Right here.
Yep.
Right here. An herb for every reason and season.
The Elkhart Historical Society April Wildflower Tours are closed for this year. They finished up. But you can sign up next year, or if you want to, grab a copy of Midwest Living, the April edition, and luxuriate in the pictures of the bluebells from Elkhart. With another Illinois story in Elkhart, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.